And welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. We have Tim Alexander, your business with 1s.blogspot.com, and I'm waiting to hear the good news that you've got your broadcast studio set up with green screen and so on with your tech friend. So you're able to start putting some live stream, we call video blogs up besides your amazing blog that you do every day. Tim, what's the news?
Well, the news in the country is not good. The United States Senate has just passed the Obama Trade Fast Track Bill, joining the U.S. House of Representatives. Now, are
you referring to the congressional building has now proved that it is the biggest whorehouse in America?
You got it. And in fact, I have an image of the U.S. Capitol. I frequently post on my news blog, and underneath it I put the biggest whorehouse in Washington. This trade bills are so terrible and so horrible for the American public that the whores in Washington, and I'm specifically referring to those in the Obama administration, the United States Senate, and the United States House of Representatives, are determined that the public, the American public, who they're supposed to be serving the interests of, do not know the details before they're passed. And, of course, they're being helped in that by the mainstream news media, which is owned by 6 globalist corporations, all run by Zionists. Our freedom, our Constitution, and our future, where is that? Well, the answer is it's down the crapper. And we don't know exactly the details that are in this bill. We do know that very little of the treaty has to do with trade. It very well may be that Medicare will be cut back for senior citizens dramatically. There may be proposals, or not proposals, there may be in effect a law to take our guns or severely restrict our rights to guns and ammunition in the bill.
But all it'll do is it'll actually force us to finally, I've talked about this in the last hour with Professor McCanney, we have a 3-pronged attack to actually start taking things down. The first is wing generator project to get energy to everybody. Second is encrypted communication, so this show and other shows will be completely encrypted so the FBI and NSA can never hack them, and we can actually put it on the backbone of the Mark of the Beast system, their SuperNet. And the third area is electronic barter unit, which basically means much more advanced than just cryptocurrencies. You can barter anything, services and goods around the world without any barriers whatsoever. And the problem is the globalists this treaty is basically a treaty for the New World Order, for a global government to make our state and federal governments both vestigial.
Well,
it basically is a move toward a global
let me
world
be
order.
Very, very clear about this. No treaty can be passed and become law that overturns the United States Constitution or any part thereof.
I think they just ignore that, just like Obama ignores it in the Congress. I think they don't get a rat's behind with it.
So what? Well, how many people are you talking about? The Obama administration, in the Senate, there's 100 there, 360 some in the House. What are we talking about? 1,000 crooks? Throw in a few thousand on Wall Street and so forth. There's 300 and maybe 20 million Americans. Why are we putting up with this crap?
Well, I have a feeling that they're terrified about the public finally getting wind of this. In fact, I get all kinds of, I call strange and wonderful emails with the Indigos, about people waking up. People are waking up because they killed President Kennedy, which started the Cold Truth movement. Then it amplified at least 400%. This is according to Joel Skousen. The number of people in America that didn't trust the U.S. government, knew they were lying maniacs and Satanists. And now we see things like this trade treaty. This trade treaty is a good example of a government that doesn't give a damn about the middle class or the average working person, that knows millions of jobs, thousands more factories will be exported, that the environment will be degraded, and people in the third world that do manufacture goods that try to sell back here and dump in American markets, they'll have no environmental or workers' compensation standards, so they'll kill people and destroy their health to make goods to sell us and destroy our economy. And make us in further debt.
Anybody that would do that is literally doing the work of Satan. I mean, that's just about as demonic
that's what the whole system
and as
is. In fact,
evil and as rotten to the core as you can get.
Well, what I have to say is the current operation of the current government is a beast. Our current U.S. government is not acting in a godly manner, is acting as a beast nation. We are beastly being led by Obama, and beastly led by a Congress and Senate that won't do their job, and beastly led by a Supreme Court that violates common decency.
One thing that Americans need to start doing is you need to find out where your congressman's going to appear at any public function or any either of your senators, and unless they have been out in front opposing all this stuff, and very few qualify for that, by the way, you need to show up, take some eggs, some rotten eggs, throw at them, tell them that they're worthless traitors to the American way, to the American people, to our way of life, and you're going to do everything you can to defeat the ornery so-and-sos at the next election. Give them hell. Find out where they live. Have demonstrations in front of their homes. Find out who their top people are in Washington and in their district. Find out where they live. Have demonstrations in front of their homes. Take it to them, because they are destroying our country. They're doing more damage than the damn Nazis did in the Second World War to us, or the idiots, the Germans and everybody we fought in the First World War. This is gutting this country. And, by the way, the House of Representatives is not supposed to have anything to do with treaties. A treaty can only be passed by a supermajority of the senators present. And a treaty cannot overturn the Constitution and the state. And all the rest is lies and spinning. We have got to somehow, the public, mesmerized by Kim Kardashian and all the trash that's thrown at us by the global media, the public is going to have to reach down and find some cojones, some guts to stand up to these characters. We have 93 million Americans totally out of work that are not even being counted as unemployed. So you have, this lying nonsense. Unemployment rate is only 5.6% in America as we recover from the last recession. Well, one, it wasn't a recession. Two, there's no recovery. And that means you take that 93% and plus the ones officially employed, we have over 100 million people unemployed in this country. Now, we've accepted this nonsense for too long. And yes, people, they're not exactly starving because we have food banks and we have food stamps, but that's not an acceptable way. This country is the richest country on earth, and we've allowed the thieves, and I mean that with all capital flashing letters, to just rape us royally, and we need to put a stop to it.
What I see happening is, and we talked about this with Dr. Fred Graves last week on the Jurisdictionary. We talked about this earlier this week with Clint Richardson in Hour 3 on Monday, dealing with the corporation nation. The fact is that the public basically are whiners. Even the patriots that are listening to these programs, they're basically whiners. And it's insulting to say that, and includes myself, by the way, that we whine, but when we take action, we actually go to the courts. We file actions and injunctions against congressmen and senators, not just protest them when they arrive in your community. We take actions against the Senate and Congress to pass a treaty that isn't a treaty. They call this an agreement, but they're actually going to act like it's a treaty, even though it's not a treaty. We have a situation now where the Federal Reserve shouldn't exist. In fact, we talked about this on Monday with Clint, that if we actually enforce the fact that we aren't in a state of emergency, it's called a non-war state of emergency since the 1930s, 33, that all of the executive orders of all the presidents since then would be null and void, including setting up these emergency departments like Homeland Security and the Federal Reserve, etc.
I've never read the words executive orders in the U.S. Constitution, have you?
No, they'd be wiped out because they're all based on the idea of a non-wartime state of emergency. And that's what we have as a dictator-in-chief with a... Welcome back. I'm not sure exactly how they can cut a deal when Greece just has contracted their economy 25% and cannot pay
folks were talking about Greece. We started this conversation offline. But
I don't see how any deal that's going to work will last for long. It's like saying somebody that's had multiple gunshot wounds and say, well,
here's the latest.
We need 12 units of blood in order to keep you from dying. In
the time today, Athens is closer than ever to reaching a deal with international lenders, said the Greek negotiator. Now, when the far-left Greek government was elected, they were elected on their promise that they were going to stop austerity, fascism. They weren't going to allow the global bankers to rip Greece off anymore. They were hardly in office when they began shredding their promises up. And what we're seeing in Greece is theater.
Well, they'll be out of office soon, then, because the Greek people will just remove them. If they don't follow through and do what they say
they haven't yet. Look, the only solution for Greece is the Icelandic example. The bankers in Iceland, and this wasn't it was one of the big British banks was involved, but the bankers in Iceland bought off enough politicians, and they allowed the individual banks to do all kind of shady things and arrange for Iceland, the Republic of Iceland, to guarantee everything. Well, when everything went belly up, they were demanding that this relatively small nation, 300 and some thousand people, pay billions upon billions, and the people were just incensed. You got to remember, these people are descendants of Vikings. They're pretty tough, and they basically had a electoral coup. They threw out the bums. They brought in new people. The new people had the top politicians that were involved arrested, the senior bankers arrested. They got sent to prison. They said, we're not responsible for this. This was all done fraudulently. And guess what? Iceland is one of the most prosperous countries in Europe now. They told the bankers to go to hell. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200. Just go straight to hell. Now, the only thing that
I think that's what we should do in America. The American citizenry are going to be taken to the cleaners now. This so-called treaty is passed, which is the Trans-Pacific and Transatlantic Partnerships, is to make our entire government and the decisions of our public officials, which are supposed to be our servants, completely vestigial. It means they're going to completely destroy the idea we have representative government. Well, we don't even have direct election of the president. We elect the Electoral College that elects the president. And people don't know that. They think they elect the president. No, they don't. They elect the Electoral College that decides who the president's going to be.
Well, actually, the Founding Fathers set that up because they were afraid of what you have today, which is a bunch of nonsense. People like Hillary and Jeb Bush and so forth running. Just the nightmare from hell. The Clintons are some of the scummiest people that have ever floated on the cesspool that we call Washington, and the Bushes are right up there with them. And of course, Obama, he's believe it or not, is a step above them. These people sell out America. They sell out every single one of us, and they do it time and time and time again. And, we do have laws in the books for a lot of this, laws that aren't being enforced. And the public needs to start insisting that laws start being enforced. For instance, you have 6 corporations that control 96% of the news media in America. Well, I thought we had laws to prevent concentration of wealth like that. Where are they? How about when you go in a hospital and, you're sick and they give you a Tylenol or an aspirin? Now, I'm not talking about a fancy Tylenol with codeine in it or one that's inserted rectally. I'm talking about just your run-of-the-mill Tylenol. The average price nationwide of one Tylenol pill administered in a hospital is $49. Now, by any rational definition of the word, that's extortion. You got somebody sick in a hospital bed, and you say, "Oh, you're feeling a little discomfort? Well, here we'll give you this aspirin, or we'll give you this Tylenol, which, by the way, only cost us a couple pennies in the volume we buy them in, and we're going to charge you $49. If you don't like it, suffer." Now, why aren't the hospital administrators being charged with extortion?
Well, of course, the reason is that the hospital system is designed basically to identify problems that they can create profit centers on.
Well, but when you have someone in a hospital bed and you're extorting that kind of money out of them, gee, I think you get a conviction. How many prosecutors in the United States have filed charges against hospital administrators? None that I know of, not for anything like that. And why not? Why shouldn't our local prosecutors be going after? In my hometown, we've got an administrator in the hospital. She makes over $2 million a year. Over $2 million a year,
yeah.
And her hospital is one in the lead. If they charge you, if they bring a civil suit against you, because of course they rape you terribly on everything they do, and you say I'm not going to go, the hell with them. Well, they throw you in jail for not showing up at the hearing, and many people here have been thrown in jail because they failed to appear at a hearing by this particular hospital. Now, and so what you end up having is the legal profession, which makes a lot of money off the hospitals enforcing their fraudulent debt. They're all happy, and the judges are happy because they come from the lawyers and they're buddies with the lawyers. But why don't the public begin to demand that the crooks in the hospitals, the administrators, be criminally charged? That would put an end. You throw a few of them in jail for a couple of years, I'll guarantee you prices would drop dramatically.
Yeah. Well, I think
they say,
the problem
so
is
many people don't pay us, we have to charge. Okay, fine. You come across a guy who's dying of thirst, and you say, by the way, I've got a nice bottle of ice cold water here. I'll sell it to you for $49. And you say, well, I don't have $49. I only have $29. Okay, we'll make you a deal because you're poor. We'll let you have it for $29. Now, it costs you 25 cents, you understand? So you've ripped the guy off for $28.75 or whatever. A decent profit might have been $1 or something. And you act like you're a great Christian. You're helping all these people. No, you're an extortionist.
Well,
it's pure and
Tim,
simple. It's not complicated. It's not
Tim,
rocket science.
I think what we need to do
there's a
is
lack of a will to enforce the law.
Well, I think the problem is that we need to do things like jurisdictionary actions. We need to have people stop whining, simply, which is good to start whining, but it's people to move on to action. Action is what we're talking about, real action. And welcome back, and Tim, let's talk about some more of the news items. And we talk about action plans. We talk about proceeding litigant action, for example. I want to bring on some of these politicians like Van Paul on the show and have them cross-examined. When he came up with this flat tax thing, my wife went ballistic, Michelle, because he doesn't even explain it. A small business like ours, if you just went to a flat tax without write-offs, you destroy the real estate market. You destroy much small business. The big mega corporations like Walmart have $78 billion hidden in funds, trust funds, and places with creative banking all over the planet.
Cayman Islands and elsewhere.
Right. So the problem I see is that harebrained plans like just a simple straight flat tax, when you have to migrate the system slowly to whatever you're going to bring. And what's the purpose of this flat tax? How about the idea of why don't you tax the corporate executive and the big corporations that are paying almost nothing, they're transnational, to do business in America or do business outside of America? They're not paying taxes outside of America when they should be. These U.S.-based transnational corporations should be paying tax wherever the hell they are. And I get a kick out of it with corporations like Walmart, where they actually don't even have to own the building. They got a 99-year renewable lease. They put up the building as a shell. They make a great arrangements with the no such agency, the NSA and the FBI. So if there is a collapse in the world economy in America, they're primary transfer points for interrogating and shipping people off to civil detention camps. People don't understand this. The same with the U.S. Postal Service. What it is these transnational corporations are getting away with murder to tax the middle class that has some substance that can create some jobs by, quote, flat taxing us without write-off is just harebrained, isn't it?
Well, yeah, most of these 57,000 large factories in the last decade or so that have been shipped overseas, the corporations doing it actually got federal tax deductions for shipping our factories and our jobs overseas.
Wow.
Now, that's, like shooting yourself in the foot multiple times. But here's the thing. If there is no penalty for the crooks, well, then it's Katie bar the door. For instance, if you said, well, I could sure use some money, and, well, here's a nice bank just down the street from me. Why don't I just grab my shotgun or whatever and go in and take a big laundry bag until I'm filled up? And go home, and, I've got another $30,000 or something. If the cops aren't there to enforce it, now I guarantee you, by the way, you mess with a bank, you're going to have city, state, and Fed agents all over you. But say you didn't. Well, there would be pretty soon there'd be no banks because everybody would be helping themselves, and pretty soon the money would all be gone. But if there's no enforcement and there's no downside, so a hospital administrator, his or her hospital charges you $50 for an aspirin, well, there's no downside. Oh, there may be some people madder than hell in their office screaming at him, screaming at some flunky he works for him. Well, that happens every day. They don't care if you don't pay it. There are many attorneys that work for him will take you to court and try screaming at the judge. You'll get some time in the slammer, and they'll get a judgment against you, and you'll have to pay it. Where's the downside? A congressman or a senator sells you out to TPP and all the rest of these, the latest from the Abominator. Where's his downside? He's going to get reelected, almost certainly. Nobody's going to bother him. And, he's the right honorable, the honorable Congressman so-and-so. Nobody's throwing eggs at him, and I don't necessarily mean that literally, but, figuratively. Nobody's demonstrating in front of his house. His staffers are on top of the world. Nobody's demonstrating in front of their homes or apartments. There's no downside to the crooks. Well, if crooks don't have a downside, the rest of us people who aren't crooks, who are decent, law-abiding, decent human beings, we're screwed. And we are the ones that have to insist on a downside. And so far, I mean, I'm 64, you're about 63, Bill, and this is not the country that we grew up in. Can you imagine?
Well, I'll tell you what it is. There's been a gradual dumbing down of the population.
Yes.
I won't mention it, but it's a relative, okay? And they take an attitude, they haven't gone to college, they get, 4.0 grade point average. And they think that Dad, being a conspiracy theorist, is just nuts. The fact is that I'm not nuts, I'm informed. There's a big difference. And the problem is that it's dangerous it's like saying outside there's a saber-toothed tiger, the ancient caveman. But they'll tell you there's no way, there's no way that they can smell a saber-toothed tiger. You don't know anything about the trailings of, stool of saber-toothed tiger. They don't know the kills with the bones outside the cave, etc. So they'll tell you it's all an illusion that there's a saber-toothed tiger. So they go when it's exactly dangerous, and you hear their screams as the saber-toothed tiger eats them. Now, if you deal with the same thing today, they'll tell you the government doesn't have any bad intentions toward the public. They're not really geoengineering the weather. They didn't do 9/11, even though 9/11 was a war game, and it was done by a guy that was in renal failure on dialysis in a cave in Afghanistan. Sure. So they tell you these outlandish statements.
And Oswald all by himself killed Kennedy, even though he was photographed standing in front as the motorcade went by, and so forth.
So the problem I see is the education system nowadays damages your children. It damages them to the point where they don't really believe that even when you ask them rational questions and say, well, if you recall what happened in Oklahoma City, you know that Oklahoma City was a very strong building. It wasn't taken down by the ANFO. The Khobar Towers had 7 times more ANFO in the bombs that were put in front of the building that were ANFO or fertilizer bombs, and it only damaged pushed in a couple of windows. It didn't structurally damage the building. What we have is a situation where when I have a public that is what I call viciously ignorant, ignorant to the point where they put themselves and everybody else around them in danger. It's like getting in a lifeboat, and someone has got an insane rage that he's got to get the fire axe and put a hole in the bottom of the boat so everybody will survive.
Yeah, right.
And if you don't grab his arms before he gets the fire axe, and he drives a hole in the bottom of the boat, you all drown, because even if you have a life vest on, if you're stuck out in the ocean, you'll get hypothermia within 30 minutes, and you'll soon be dead. But the problem is, you see, a lot of and this is to say about younger people, by and large, younger people are pretty darn inured into the civilization. They think that the world of the last, say, 20 years is the way things have always been, and it's not. And if you're older like we are, you realize that they've gradually mutated America, especially since the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So America is not anywhere like what it used to be. And they've gradually made it worse and worse and worse, and each generation is getting more and more dumbed down. So the people that are above 40, they look at the young people nowadays that are 2,000 plus and say, you kids are really nuts. And the people that are 40 and look at us 60-year-old plus, they think, well, we're nuts. No, we're just more informed. We've been through more crap. We've seen what the world was like before all this craziness happened. And it was crazy before we were even born.
When I was young, and I got out of grad school, and it was a recession on, but I could always find a job. And eventually I got a job selling cars. Now, I was 27 years old, and I worked for a local Ford dealership. And the first 13 months, the first month, by the way, I was on a salary. And after that, it was commission. I made over $30,000. Now, that's not adjusted for inflation. That was $30,000 back in 1978, 79. That was quite a bit of money. And I had a new car to drive. It cost me nothing. Nowadays, guys working that same job don't make $30,000. They don't get a free car. And, of course, $30,000 is only worth today is only a tiny fraction of what it was back then. That's just one of infinite numbers of examples.
Exactly.
Because they've ruined things so bad.
Yeah, so the young people now, a lot of them are stuck basically in MIC jobs that can't make enough to even survive.
And living with mommy and daddy in their 30s.
Exactly. Tim, I think if we were to give a kind of a bullet points based on the news today about what Greek coming up with a deal, here's my viewpoint of that. I think, number one, this fall, all these deals are going to fall through. This fall, by the end of the summer fall, we're going to be in a much bigger war in the Middle East. They're deploying now a new tank and military hardware in Europe, which is, again, a provocation of Russia. We're moving step by step closer to it.
Every day, Dr. Bell, there's a new provocation either against Russia or China.
Which means we're heading toward a nuclear, biological, chemical war.
Don't forget cellular.
Yeah, and it may not happen next month, but it might be a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. But the ramp up, we're in what's called the economic phase of World War III. This is not a joke. This is a situation where the globalists basically say, we are either the king of the hill or we're going to blow up the hill, which means Earth. They're going to end up all life on Earth unless they can be the rulers of this planet. And we need to end it really quickly.
But that's not it. That alone isn't it. Because they think there's too many of us unnecessary eaters. So, yes, they want to run the world, but by the way, they would like to eliminate most of us.
Well, they're working on it. I had my friend Dr. Ron Klatz call me a couple of weeks ago, and he said, Deagle, are you responsible for this? And it says the site's called Deagle, Deagel. It's the U.S. military.
Yeah, that's the one I told you about, rumor.
Real funny, yeah. And Ron called me up, and he called me up late, and we talked for hours. He's the founder of the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. And he says, I can't believe it. They're revising all these reports down so that by 2025, there'll only be 65 million Americans left. That's out of 320 million. That takes a hell of a lot of subtraction. So it means that means either they've migrated out of the country, they've died, or there's been some kind of internal revolution, and a lot of us have just left.
That means that my distant cousins that own one of the biggest coffin manufacturers in the world are going to get a lot richer.
Right, and I don't think people really understand just how horrifying this is. And these people, like the One World Organization that Deagle talked about, the EAGEL, they actually have real plans. They've actually met with Obama and with the United Nations because this is a real concrete plan. These are not just kind of whack jobs that, well, we're crazy and we're psychotic, we're on a day pass. No, they're actually endorsed by the global bankers and the United Nations and our government, and by Obama.
there was an article, and I don't remember if I linked it or if it was one of those that I didn't have time to link, but it described Pope Francis's all this nonsense he's spewing out about global warming as really forming the basis of something way beyond Agenda 21, a super Agenda 21. And then there was another article that's saying, well, how can he support that unless he changes church dogma on birth control? And, of course, the follow-up will be on abortion. There comes a point in which if you have a homicidal maniac walking down the street firing his rifle in people's windows, you know, if the cops don't come out, maybe you ought to grab a gun and take him out, you know? You might go next, and your brick wall may not stop his high-powered rifle slug, so you may be shot even if you're not in front of a window. So when you have these demonic, and they are demonic, parasites, what does a parasite do to something it infects? Well, it generally kills the host. And that's what we're seeing. And we're seeing America die. We're seeing the world die. And we're seeing people actually saying, oh, well, we need to eliminate, several billion people. There's too many people in this world. You notice the people saying that always plan on surviving. They're far too important to die. But the rest of us, well, we can kick the bucket. Yeah. Sorry, that's not God's way, and it's not the way of 99.9% of the human race. We're dealing with a pathology, a sickness, an illness that is purely evil to the core. And
that really is.
Why are we fighting all these wars? How do they benefit John Smith or Bill Deagle or Tim Alexander or Frank Whatchamacallit or Nancy so-and-so?
Well, it benefits the fertilizer over the plot of ground where bones are laid. That's it.
I mean, how many men and women have we sent to Afghanistan?
Well, I'm totally
Iraq
finished with it.
And if they didn't come back dead, they came back missing legs or arms
let's put it this
or
way.
eyes.
Yeah,
and maybe
Tim, 2 days ago was the spring equinox. I'm going to call today, Tuesday the 23rd of June, 2015, as Disconnection Day. We had a big show today with Professor McCanny. He'll be back on Thursday and Friday. It's Disconnection Day. This is a time when we finally decide we're going to start disconnecting sequentially from the system. We're going to sue them in court. We're going to call these senators and congressmen on the mat. We're going to put them in jail and prison. And if they try to take our guns, we're going to march in all the capitals, and we're going to take over this country and every country on earth. We're going to disconnect from the financial system, the power system. Good. We're finally decided, as I say, with like the movie Network, whether it's the medical system that's disgusting. I had a call this morning, for example, from one of the doctors at the Oasis of Hope in Tijuana, Mexico. And we have all kinds of ways of treating cancer that's not going to cost you a fortune or kill you. They had a program on 60 Minutes last week about all the people that can't afford the drugs to, quote, keep them alive. Well, I can tell you, having given chemo as long ago as 1977 at the Vancouver General Hospital, one of the second largest hospital complex on earth outside Karolinska in Sweden, that I personally have killed a lot of people with chemo. And I can tell you personally, it's poison, okay? When I questioned it, by the way, I thought it was a pariah.
The fact that
let me finish anyway.
Rapidly
Tim, let me finish.
Cells first.
Let me tell you. Let me finish here. What we're seeing here is a system where I am completely disgusted. I had one client the other day who had referred from another friend, and she said, well, she was desperate because it removed her colon, and she's very sick, and she's got a small bowel overgrowth and so on. And then she raised the question to my wife. She said, well, I don't know if I should do this, because I don't listen to the program, and I don't know who Dr. Deagle is, but I checked, and he had his license revoked in the state of Colorado. I said, do you know the history of that? The history of the state where I was closing down industry because they were injuring workers or putting the public in danger? The history where the senior member of the surgical team, Dr. Michael Jansen, was doing spinoplasty surgery, and I did an independent evaluation and ended up where he threatened, because he knew the board president, Ned Kalanch, and other members. Do you know that history? No. You know why? Because if you stand up against evil, the morons out there that don't listen to the program and don't know this, don't realize that I'm a hero, and I'm a patriot, and I have guts, and I'm a Christian. And I wouldn't do this if I wasn't a Christian, a patriot, and a hero. That's the facts. And if you want to say that's arrogant, and I've had some idiots out there say,
no, it's not arrogant,
Dr. Deagle, you shouldn't say that you know more than us. You shouldn't say that you know more than us. You shouldn't have that attitude. Yes, I do know. If you can prove to me by asking questions, and by the way, every hour is a program except the first hour on Fridays, and next week it'll be Thursday because we're going to have a short weekend. But if you can prove to me, if you're a grandmother at grade 3 and you know more than me, I am willing to let go of my previous level of stupidity. But if you can't prove it, and you don't have the guts to stand up and do something about this crazy New World Order that's killing our planet and going to destroy the human race, and as they publicly say they want to depopulate America and the world 90% plus, and the Georgia Grindstones, the World Watch Institute, the NSM 1974 with Henry Kissinger, yes, we need to depopulate the world population. If you don't think this is all real, you think Dr. Deagle's psychotic, you're a moron and a gutless idiot, and you're not only going to die physically, you're going to die spiritually, and you will be annihilated. So I have had it with people who want to question my ethics. If you listen to the program, you know who I am. I am a real person. I'm not an imaginary person, and I am with a big bad bill, if you want to call it. They call Dr. Wild Bill. That was my name back in medical school and residency, and I'd shove aside your senior resident in your fourth year medical school and did 40 total hips before I even graduated from medical school. So you want to get in my way, you better watch it, because I don't tolerate crap from listeners or other people, but I will stand up for you, and I will stand up for you 100% and tell you the truth, whether you like it or not, even if it makes you vomit or get angry. I just don't want apathy, but I want people to understand. You want to start throwing back crap from like the Colorado Board of Examiners and other people, you need to realize I'm telling you the truth. Whether it's Cancer Truth or the New World Order. And now that the government is actually saying this in Google, I call it Godgle, is actually saying what I've been telling people for 20 years, including with the Prophecy Club in 1999, 16 years ago. Now it's happening. They're saying, oh, geez, Deagle's not psychotic and schizophrenic and a narcissistic egomaniac. He's actually told the truth because he cares about us. Yeah, get it. Get it. Stop sniping. Start preparing for disaster. It's coming quick. Folks. Get right with God. And Tim's telling you the truth. No wonder he's mad. I'm mad as hell. And I'm not going to take it anymore from anyone. Period. Got it.